So this is my 2006 Mazda 3 MPS, also known as a Mazda Speed 3 in the US. I think in the Australian and UK market it was an MPS. I bought this car back in December 2010 actually, so I've had it for nearly 10 years. Originally I was looking for something to replace my older daily that I was driving around at the time, and spent a fair bit of time looking at various cars, Evos, WRXs, Civic Type R, Ford Focus ST, probably the key ones, and I needed something that was just a nice easy sort of daily driver with a bit of power to sort of go along with it as well. Really liked the Evos, but just wasn't really sort of into it as a daily driver. Wasn't really sort of liking the WRXs of that era as well. I much prefer sort of the GCA model as well. Yeah, and then I went and had a look at the Mazda. I wasn't really a sort of a massive Mazda person, but I went and had a look for it, and you know, the car drove really well. I thought it was a particularly good package relevant to all the other cars, and it's something that people don't really know a lot about. Like, you can drive around and people just think it's a normal Mazda 3 with a wing and some wheels on it. And yeah, so I bought it from a dealer in Melbourne with 41,000 kilometres on it, which is about 25,000 miles, so it was relatively new. Being an 06, it was only 4 years old. It was first registered in 2008, so it'd only been on the road for a couple of years. And I pretty much drove it around stock for close to 2 years, I reckon. You know, as a daily driver, it was really good, like quite comfortable, good amount of torque, things. And I never really sort of thought too much about sort of doing any mods to it, but it wasn't until I went to, you know, a few car meets and started speaking to people that had Mazdas as well, and I thought, oh yeah, maybe I'll do some light mods to it. So basically I started off with a rear transmission mount or rear engine mount, which is a common issue with these things. They tend to lock out of third gear as standard. Even under really light loads, it tends to block out, so that fixed that problem. So I just bought a CPE rear engine mount, had that fitted up, and yeah, it was fine. Then decided to have a bit of a look at just freeing the motor up a little bit, so I just got an intake. So again, I think I got a Corksport unit, just all the silicon piping and stuff to go with it, and a Corksport airbox. Put that on, and again drove it around for ages, like that, probably for another year and a half. I didn't really touch it at all, and then, you know, got sort of used to the way the car was driving and everything like that, and just thought, oh, it might be time for some more upgrades. So I sourced an ETS top mount intercooler from the US, and a CPE dunk pipe with turbo. Had those fitted up and had that tuned as that package, and it put down just under 200 kilowatts at front wheels, which is about 260 horsepower, which again is not massive for Mazdas. You can definitely get more power out of them, but for a daily it was fine. You know, it was more than enough power for what I needed, and you know, it was tuned on 98 RON as well, so you know, I wanted to be able to just put pump fuel in it wherever I went, and not have to worry about E85 or trying to push more power out of it. Again, standard turbo, runs about 17 pounds. Never had an issue with it. The car's just ticked over 180,000 kilometres, which is about 110,000 miles maybe. Yeah, and overall it's been a really good, reliable sort of car. Like, I've never had too many issues with it. The clutch is still actually the factory clutch, so the clutches that come with a car from factory are really good. In terms of some of the issues that I've had with the car, I'll go in the order of the issues since the ownership. So obviously the first one was just the recall for the driver's side engine mount. Now that was done before the car was even delivered as well. It's just a factory recall for the single bolt that holds the engine mount in. Yeah, they should all be done anyway by now. If not, I'm sure we can get it done from Mazda. And yeah, then the second issue I had was with sway bar, well, particularly the sway bar bushes. So the front end at about 15,000 Ks was starting to knock quite badly. So I replaced those, got rid of the issue of knocking and things like that. Interestingly though, when we changed it out, the sway bar bushes that were already on there looked brand new, so there's no signs of wear or anything like that. So I'm not sure whether it was a sizing issue or what, but something to look out for. The next issue, and probably the biggest one that you need to be mindful of, is the timing chain and the tensioner. Now that went on this car at about 95,000 Ks, so you can particularly notice it at its startup. Would make a bit of a funny noise and stuff as the timing chain was hitting the bottom of the rocker cover. Yeah, it's a bit disappointing. I think that was a factory recall item in the US, but it wasn't here in Australia, so it's a bit frustrating. Mazda quoted about $3,000 to do the job. I actually did it with my brother over the course of a weekend at home. Even doing it at home, you know, obviously saving some labour, the parts alone was still about $1,000. So it's definitely something you want to look out for if you're buying one of these cars. Make sure it's been done. Majority of them should have been done by now, but you know, if they can't really prove it, yeah, I'd probably be negotiating pretty hard, because it's going to be an expensive item if something goes wrong with it. And then not long after that, I split a front strut. That was probably around the 80,000 K mark. So decided just to upgrade all the suspension, so it's now running on BCBR coilovers, which have been relatively okay. Like, I know some people sort of hate on the BCs. They're probably not the best coilover out there, but they've been relatively okay so far. The car does sit quite low as well, and the extra stiffness has caused the dash to crack too, which is not ideal, but anyway. But yeah, in terms of an overall car, like, I'm really happy with it. It's been super reliable. Like, I don't treat it that hard. You know, it's still got the factory clutch in it after 180,000 Ks, and you know, 260 odd horsepower on the front wheels. And I think that's a bit of a testament to the clutches that Mazda have put into them. But yeah, if you're looking at buying one of these, like, you know, it's fantastic value. I heaps prefer the Gen 1 model over the Gen 2, but again, that's a personal preference of mine. You know, some people like the Gen 2, but I don't know, I've always been more of a fan of the Gen 1 myself. But you know, you can pick up ones with, you know, probably higher Ks on them, starting sort of around the 7,000 mark. I have seen a few rougher ones cheaper than that. You know, and some of the better models will go sort of 10 to 12. But in terms of finding something, you know, with this level of performance, drivability and practicality, there's not too much else on the market that you can pick up for that price. You know, there's probably like WRXs and maybe some old GTI Golfs and, you know, Ford Focus STs and things like that. But yeah, overall, like, I'm really happy with it. Yeah, as I said, it's been super reliable. It's got really good drivability. It does suffer from a little bit of torque steer, but I've owned a lot of front-wheel drives in my time, so I don't really notice it that much. It tends to be something that if my friends drive it, or people that drive rear-wheel drives drive it, they're like, oh, torque steers, but I don't know, like, it's not, I don't find it that bad as people make out for it, but you know, everyone's different. In terms of performance, like, you know, like, obviously they're a quick car out of the box, but you know, with the mods that it's got on it, it's more the mid-range, so once you get into third, it really starts to pull quite quick. You know, I've got my brother who's got an R32 GTR. It's pretty much line ball with that, so it is pretty quick in a straight line. I took it to the drags before I had the suspension done, and just with standard 215 fronts, nothing special, you know, ran a 13.9 at 104. Like, again, it's not the quickest time out there, but you know, for me, it doesn't need to be the quickest car. It just needs to be a practical all-rounder with a little bit of go when you want it to actually go. But overall, like, great little package. something that you can really, if you really want to push it hard, you can get some really good power out of it, and things like that. So they have a tendency to bend rods, so that's probably going to be a limiting factor in stock form. But still you can quite comfortably get around the 250 kilowatts at the wheels. If you're going to run E85 and maybe meth and things like that. But it depends how far you want to take it. But for me, just having a reliable car that I can jump in and drive around, and when you want to go quick, it'll go quick. When you want to just cruise it, it's just a good little cruiser. I've done a few interstate trips with it. It's been to the snow. I drive it pretty much everywhere. It's got good space if you have to load it up and things like that. So it's quite happy with it.